All right, so we're live here at Zappos World Headquarters. This is the front entrance. In the next couple minutes, I'm going to share with you a couple fun facts about here and some of the incredible insights I got from doing the full tour. So first of all, let's come meet the crew here, the front desk. Ow! Wow! That's awesome. So here at Zappos in Las Vegas, it's a really famous company when it comes to understanding culture and how to build it. And so they live by 10 core values, which you can find right from the Zappos website. And you can read Tony Hsieh's philosophy in his book, Delivering Happiness. I think the few things that surprised me that I probably could have never read just from the book is it's kind of zany. Holy smokes, it's kind of zany. I mean, you can read about culture where there's holacracy, I think is what they call it, where there's no management titles whatsoever, but to actually kind of see it in action is kind of a whole different story. I was surprised by that. I was surprised by how kind of like noisy and boisterous the environment was, instead of it being, when I think and imagine, I've never been to Google, but when I think of being at Google or Facebook, I'm imagining like coders really plugged in and doing their thing. And here, oh my goodness, it's like streamers and people standing and sitting and chatting, and it really surprised me. And I could have read it 100 times, but it took seeing it in person that really, really opened my eyes. There's a famous quote, and I think it's Peter Drucker, and he says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So when, in the beginning of the tour, they talked about how it's not important to adopt Zappos' culture. However, it is important to create your own culture and to put some thought into it and define it. And then from there, teach and lead through culture every step along the way. So what that means to teach and lead through culture is when onboarding a new teammate and you're explaining why you do things a certain way, you tie it back to culture. To say, for example, that in Profit Factory, one of our core values is show people you care. So I'm a bit of the please and thank you police on our team, which is kind of funny. When I point it out, though, when I'm training someone, I'll tie it back to say to say please and thank you in an email is an example of showing people that you care. Which brings me to another point, and I think that Zappos is doing a really nice job of it, is kind of teaching through example. Now sometimes, especially if our businesses are smaller or earlier on, not a hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in sales, sometimes we don't have that benefit of the power of the pack. And instead, we have to do it through storytelling. And that's how I've bridged the gap. Is along the way to pick up examples of core values, examples of culture that I really, really enjoy, and from there, just writing them down, having kind of 2, 3, 4, 5 stories per core value, so that when it comes time to bring someone new in, especially with a virtual team where I can't parade someone virtually through an office space that doesn't exist, is for me to tell stories. An example of showing people you care, to talk about core value number 2 with Profit Factory again and our Great Assistant program. My grandfather passed away just about a year and a half ago. And in the mail, I was surprised and delighted and deeply, profoundly touched to find a greeting card sent from Sarah, who you know as my assistant. And in that card, she had purchased, on behalf of her family and as a gift to my family, 2 spruce trees to be planted close to our family lake property. One symbolizing him, and one, my grandfather, and the other symbolizing me. And that idea that a symbol of how, even though he may be physically gone from this planet that he lives on. And I get a little emotional just thinking about that. And so in sharing that story with you, I hope you can see how through storytelling we can emphasize the core values. And so when we're bringing new team members on, we can say, it's not just show people you care, it's show people you care, and what we mean by that is ... Here's a few stories, including in this case the story of my grandfather passing away and how Sarah and her husband and family commemorated him with these 2 pine trees. So, you know, culture is certainly, I feel like it can get squishy at times as far as how do we do it. I find that culture can also be tough to transmit from one team member to the next. And I think that a great 80-20 is coming up with the list of core values. And again, I shoot for kind of 3 to 5. Here at Zappos, they had 34 or 37, and they got it down to just 10. The way they did it was they just asked all their employees. They said, you know, what does it mean to work at Zappos? And they took all those submissions. At the time, they weren't hundreds and hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of employees. But they had a good point. They said, you know, people support what they help create. And so along those lines, if people help to identify and coach and lead on core values, they've co-created it, which creates a ton more ownership. So identifying those core values, start with 3, 4, 5 maybe for yourself. Keep it simple. Come up then with each of the 3 to 5 core values. Come up with ideally 2 or 3 stories at least for each of them. And now that gives you a very powerful training and teaching tool when you're working with your team. And then from there, it just becomes a matter of always tying things back to your core values. Every time you need to ask somebody to show up a little differently in work, if you need to train new team members, if you need to celebrate catching people doing something right, every time you do that, you come back to the core values. Pete on our team, once we were at a Whole Foods in Austin, Texas, and we were being driven around by a fellow entrepreneur friend. And we pulled into the parking lot at Whole Foods, and there was a shopping cart just sitting there, and it looked ominous, like it might roll into any of the number of vehicles that was in the parkade. And to his credit, Pete got out of the car without being asked, without him making a big deal of it, and he just walked over to the shopping cart, grabbed it, wheeled it, put it back in the cart return area. And I thought, that's incredible. So I made sure to say to him, you know, Pete, thank you so much. Like, that was incredible. You know, show people you care. So in all kind of like day-to-day, just, you know, sometimes it's even some of the mundane stuff, you can find ways to tie it back to core values. And now suddenly there's a momentum that happens without you having to be there all the time to remind people of core values. So hopefully that helps. This is one of the flagship worldwide companies when it comes to culture. That's Zappos. Your culture doesn't have to be the same as Zappos. I like what they said, though, is think about being conscious of what it is, codifying it, like writing it out, and then from there teaching and leading through those core values every day that goes by. Tim Francis from Profit Factory and the Great Assistant Program. Thanks so much for watching.